Good late Tuesday, early Wednesday meteorologist Casey Cloud here in Witherspoon right now, giving a look at that Doppler perspective across the region. You do see some convection there, and even a spin if I have some of those wind arrows on. Some low pressure here in the region is kind of an intriguing pattern because actually seeing some of that come across north central Florida on that Tuesday, but not developing tropically as of yet. So that's some good news here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. I'll switch this over to the infrared satellite and you'll kind of get an idea of what is going on here. And you can kind of see there is some convection in the Gulf. I go back 4 hours, you see more of that toward the east, but we never had any local warnings here. That was great news. No flash flood warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, anything like that. We kind of had, a little bit maybe less instability at points here. And it was just an interesting scenario. Further to the west, they had more instability here and they were able to have some severe warnings there toward like Panama City and the like. But as we're kind of looking at things, tracking things right now, I know I'll go ahead and switch to the current radar again, and then go back 4 hours on that. If that spin was a little bit further east, I mean, it was crossing there, north central Florida, but not becoming Dexter there. Still could get that name at the possibility, but that would not be a storyline way for us. Maybe some, more moisture still in the eastern fringes of whatever this becomes here toward the Big Bend and areas there of north central Florida to some degree, but that's going to be pushing west, so it's going to become a little drier ultimately, and we're going to be getting more back into that summertime pattern before it gets wetter again next week. As I pull in some of the model guidance here, as it's been tracking things, that icon there toward like Union, Alachua, Bradford counties, that was the invest here, the center of it, right here in north central Florida at 8 p.m. on that Tuesday. But again, it was not that impressive. Winds a little gusty, but not even the tropical storm force. Even in the gust here, rain amounts not overly impressive. But you see that's been the track of it has it going more toward like our southern counties there in the Big Bend, but because it's a little further south, that could have implications for Louisiana, but not getting its act together so far, which is good news, obviously, for folks further out toward the west. Now, as we go ahead and look back at the last 12 hours in terms of some of those rainfall estimates here, you do see some areas of Marion County picking up 3, 4, maybe 5 inches of rain in the isolated areas, but like in Ocala, only an inch or two. That's not much different in summertime here, as we're looking a little more widespread, but only in our southern areas. Our areas further north, even Alachua, Bradford, really, drier than a lot of summertime days. So wasn't that big of a deal overall. It, could have got more organized, could have got a name, and then it would have been a lot bigger deal because that center went right across, our area here, but it never became tropical, never even became a tropical depression, not a potential tropical cyclone, nothing like that. So not turning the logo red, you still might have to if it really gets it's set together before it gets toward Louisiana and becomes a bona fide tropical system, tropical storm. It's looking unlikely to mention in late Monday there when we were on with some storm coverage. We had those, storms like the tornado warning, south of our area, Hernando County and Pasco there, a situation where we ended up having a scenario where thought if it really could get out further into the Gulf, it could become a hurricane before, it hit Louisiana. That's looking less and less likely, but a weak tropical storm, that's a big rainmaker, pushes more moisture as it gets this out together to some degree. That's not off the table by any stretch here. So that's your 2-day cyclone formation probability. That's where it's been at since Monday night there, right after I did that update, as it went to 40 and it hadn't, gone up any higher than that in terms of the full cyclone formation probability forecast. It hadn't jumped over 40, for the whole period, 7 days, 2 days here as we're looking at things. So, again, just kind of looking at the situation here overall and tracking it here. That means it still could become Dexter, but it very well may not. And it could even become a depression and not a storm. So we'll keep our eyes on that. Not turning the logo red, though, because it is not something that's just an overwhelming concern here at this point in time, especially since it is pushing away from our area. And it did not do much. I mean, I was outside summing what our low was here. Our low, we had about 1,012 millibar pressure here east of Starkoma barometer. That's about the lowest it got. So not that big of a deal here whatsoever. I mean, you could say that's the pressure of a tropical depression maybe, but really disorganized, a little breezy, but we've had a lot worse, even in summertime storms. I mean, even the storm maximum Sunday there was for Sunday night. We had the severe thunderstorm warning in play and the like. So not that big of a deal here locally. Doesn't mean it won't be a big deal further out toward the west as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here in toward the weather center. See the risk outlook here for today is general thunderstorms as we're looking across our area. Further up in the country, there's a couple areas of slight risk, and you see some tornado risk there toward like Denver and Chicago and Green Bay, Milwaukee, and the like. But as we go ahead and get back on in here, we're just gonna go ahead and keep on looking at things, keep on tracking things here in toward the weather center. I'm gonna go ahead and just keep on monitoring things here, and of course we're gonna keep you guys up to date on the very latest here in toward that weather center. I know, again, not turning logo red. We thought about it Monday. We were very close based on what we're seeing, but not quite getting its act together here before I got toward Florida. As we look here, the names, Dexter, the next on the list there. Hurricane season runs through November 30th there. So still another 4.5 months or so left as we're looking at things there, you know, in toward the tropics. I mean, that's a long period here of time, obviously. But as we're looking here at things, gotta keep watching as it peaks there from, you know, mid-late August into early October. You know, we can have, you know, storms like Charlie. We had an 04 on August 13th, or right before August 7th. A few days before we had Debbie there. Last year, hurricane, and we had storms like Matthew and Michael. Big reminders about hurricanes in early October. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. Of course, Milton was pretty late, pretty late last year as well. So as we go ahead and look at things, that rainfall forecast, see quite a bit of rain toward Louisiana, toward Lake Charles, toward Lafayette there. Looking like it could add up a good bit, a little less, but still could be a problem toward New Orleans, Gulfport, Mississippi, Mobile, Alabama. So gonna be watching that locally. So the rain amount starting to fall off. We had a flood watch for a little bit for some more counties, Putnam, Marion, Levy, talking about areas there like Dixie, but that, you know, ended up not staying in play there as things have moved along here in the period. But Clutter.com/radar, a good place to go for the interactive radar, of course. It's always a big reminder about what flood alerts can mean. You know, we had the tragedy in Texas. Did have a couple flash flood warnings toward Brevard County in East Central Florida, and that Tuesday from the Invest 93L, but not ending up becoming a you know, a huge deal. Still a lot of rain for a few localized spots, but of course weather radio very helpful in all these flood situations. I know, of course, we don't have the name Dexter. May not get it from this system. May end up being a whole different system altogether. But you know, Dexter did replace Dorian, which was a catastrophic hurricane there 6 years ago on this list that repeats every 6 years. But it was retired was Dorian because of the catastrophic damage it did in the Bahamas, and now Dexter, it took its place. So, drought monitor wise, of course, we need the rain. Don't want too much too quick, but some of these areas are getting some beneficial rain that is helpful. Again, I know they ruined the rain in Texas and they got way too much, and it proved to be this absolute catastrophe for places like Kirk County there, and you know, those communities there in toward the Texas Hill Country with all the fatalities and all the missing there from the horrific flooding on July 4th morning, especially as when that concentrated there. There was another flood event the next morning. There was bad flood in San Antonio 2 weeks before even that claimed some lives as well. So just awful out that way. But Bradford County here is where we're at in North Central Florida. We're always on for any tornado warning storms. Then the 62 county, they've seen some weak rotation with some stuff, but never had any tornado warnings. Jackson Raiders back up, so that's helpful. Being able to track some stuff again now from that viewpoint as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. In fact, I'll just throw that up here. It's been down for a good little bit, but that went back up there Tuesday afternoon. We had a little weak rotation pop up in our southern fringes right when that came back up. It was more apparent on that than the Moody, but not enough for any type of tornado warning or even severe thunderstorm warning. But this is the view off of Jacksonville. You see the accent right now. Now the Moody view is also working. You see the accent closer to that pretty well. Tallahassee's working. So is the Southeast Alabama radar and even the Melbourne radar. I'm not going to switch to them right now, but you get the idea here. Now Tallahassee, I will switch to it because you can see the stuff in toward the Gulf a little bit better off with that. But as we're kind of looking as we're tracking things here in toward the weather center. Now let's go ahead and go to that extended forecast though. High temperatures, lightning, can and have proved to be dangerous here across our area. So use caution when outdoors at certain times. I know we had that terrible tragedy in southeast Georgia there on that Thursday to Wardware County, where we had 2 young people lose their lives. This is so tragic there to Wardsboro and Rock County there. The lightning coming on in southeast Georgia. Doesn't take a severe warning or anything to have the lightning threat, be deadly. Just, Roy, if you can, whenever thunder roars, go indoors. It's so dangerous, especially being out around a water body, because if you're the tallest object, it's more likely around something like that. And then, same thing goes there towards St. Augustine. I know, going back to the Southeast Georgia event, I believe the 2 young men were fishing there, and so around the water body. And then the situation in St. Augustine Pier, some folks struck by lightning there. One was in, the worst shape by far, and they were on the pier there at St. Augustine. So right again around the water body, but being one of the taller objects versus being, closer to like a tree, maybe the taller object on land. Don't want to be under a tree in a storm, obviously, because of that. But just got to be very mindful of the lightning here, and it's so hard. We have so many of them this time of year, these strikes, on the ground ones, but they can be deadly. Gotta emphasize that mantra whenever thunder roars. Please try to go indoors. But 60% chance of rain Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You see it's every day pretty much on and off. That's the thing about it. I know it makes it hard to, plan around, but you see the dropping of the percentages a little bit toward the weekend, which is good, but it's going to get hotter because of that. Maybe a little less cloud cover and warming up. So the heat index becomes a bigger deal. But humid, rainy, and hot here when we don't have the we don't actually have these storms in play. I mean, really, it gets hot and it's humid, and then the rain comes, it cools things off in a lot of cases, but it doesn't always play out exactly like that. Sometimes you can get that heat here coming into play after maybe some early afternoon storms. Things just feel even hotter later on. Certain days, different days will work out a little different, but definitely some of those highs are a little above average here, unfortunately. Going to make it sweltering out there. But again, just be careful. Always check the back seat of your car to make sure if you have a young person there, just make sure you don't leave them in that vehicle for even a few minutes, because that heat, if the air conditioning's off, it can just overtake people very rapidly here. It's like an oven. When a vehicle's AC's off and in person, there's not much they can do about it. And that could be so tragic. Animals here, that's the concern, and elderly people there too, that, may not, Roy, they might not be in good shape. And then, if they're in the back seat for a little while without the AC on, it can be a tragic outcome. So, gotta keep that in mind here. Gotta keep that in mind for sure. I'm going to wrap it on up here tonight, though. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Appreciate everybody trusting me here. I'll be back late Thursday morning unless we need to pop back in earlier. So that's going to do it for now. Again, have a great night out there, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll have more here in the days to come. Just looking to see if there's any questions or comments. I don't see any, but again, just stay safe and watch the tropics. See if that spin can kind of materialize into something for Louisiana, because then that become a bigger storyline, obviously, as we're tracking things. But we'll just kind of monitor the progress of that here over the next couple of days or so, and we'll break in, if needed, give you the latest on that or local weather here. But again, that Invest 93 Elroy did not mean that much to our local weather. Just kind of, squally here at times. We didn't even get, half inch of rain there on that Tuesday here east of Stark. So we've gotten more rain recently in other days. So that's kind of the storyline there. Be careful on the roads, of course, with the wet conditions that move through at times. Watch out for those dangerous marine conditions toward the Gulf of Mexico as well. Just, even the Atlantic, when there's a current risk around. You got to be very mindful of those.